Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jay Latuan. I'm the Executive Director of Miami-Dade College's Miami Film Festival. More importantly than that, I'm a Capricorn. Tonight, we're here to celebrate the premiere of Mucho Mucho Amor, The Legend of Walter Mercado, with a live conversation and Q&A being seen worldwide. I hope you've all joined us directly from our Netflix watch party for this heartwarming film. And if you have not yet seen the film, please stream it this weekend on Netflix and fill your life with the magic of Walter Mercado. So Mucho Mucho Amor had its world premiere at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival, and it was scheduled to have its Florida premiere as the closing night of Miami Film Festival, but was unfortunately canceled due to coronavirus-related closures. And we have a closets full of sequence for that party that we will have at some point. Tonight, with great gratitude to Netflix, we present this live event in collaboration with our promotional partners, History Miami Museum, O Cinema South Beach, the National Association of Latino Independent Producers, Outshine Film Festival, New York Latino Film Festival, and Pero Light. I'm proud to welcome the three wonderful wizardly filmmakers of Mucho Mucho Amor, Cristina Costantini, Kareem Tabsch, the co-directors, and Alex Fumero, producer. And moderating tonight's conversation and Q&A is senior editor for Variety, the always fabulous and fantastic Marc Malkin. So without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Marc, Cristina, Kareem, and Alex. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. This is weird. You talk. I have no idea if anyone can hear me, but I think you can. This is so exciting. As the three of them know, I'm a huge fan of the movie. I have spoken to them a bunch already about it, and we've been having so much fun. Yes, I'm wearing a Walter cape because Kareem the other day challenged me to do it. So last night I got the glue gun out, and here I am. So, to begin with, first of all, this was not planned. I'm also a Capricorn. And my horoscope today says, today you're enthusiastic about something, which is why you will be convincing if you share your ideas with others. Now, I know Kareem and Cristina are Libras, and this is really good. You will work well with groups today. We're in a group, which is why meetings, clubs, and your involvement in professional associations will go well, whether in person or online. And then Alex, yours is he's a Sagittarius, by the way. Look around to see how you can make improvements to your home or your family relationships. Then it says, this is the best, have the gang over for a barbecue. If you can't congregate in person, do it on Zoom.
All right.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Oh, yeah.
Your horoscope is low-key trying to kill you and telling you to have people over.
So let's start with, how did it happen? So Alex, you wanted to do a movie. Cristina and Kareem wanted to do a movie. How did you guys come together and say, hey, we should be doing this together?
It was a lot of strange coincidences. Obviously, we grew up watching Walter with our abuelitas, and that left a kind of ingrained memory of him and a fascination as an adult of how did this man, become so famous and what happened to him. But really, I was living in New York and a friend introduced me to Kareem, and it just so happened that Walter was having an estate sale in Miami, which if you're from Miami, that was a big deal that was happening because no one had heard from him in a while. And I said, man, are you going? And he was like, oh, I'm definitely going. And I said, oh, has anyone done a documentary on him? Because I had seen Dolphin Lover, Kareem's film, and it's fantastic. And he said, well, I'm trying to go buy a cape, but I'm also going to see if I can make contact with his family to see for that reason. I basically begged him to include me if he made contact. And then we set a time to talk. He had met one of Walter's nieces, Danette. And we set a time for 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. And at 2:30, I get a call from Cristina, who had been a colleague at Fusion and who had been editing Science Fair, her previous film that won Sundance and South by, and I just thought it was about that. And then she goes, the first thing I hear is, I heard you're obsessed with Walter Mercado. I want to make a documentary about him. And I was like, this is some very strange cosmic Walter stuff going on. And I explained I had another call in 30 minutes, but she was a verite, expert, and Kareem is a beast with archival. And I thought maybe this is like a marriage that would work. Little did I know that they were both Libras. But they got on the phone together, and it was like an arranged marriage. They just agreed to co-direct.
So
This is our weird baby.
Yeah. Very fabulous, strange baby we made in our arranged marriage.
So tell me, how did you get Walter to do it? Like you said, people hadn't seen him for a while. The movie definitely sets it up where he's sort of just living his life in Puerto Rico, obviously not really working. So how do you got in touch with his nieces. How do you convince them, hey, Walter should meet us. He should do this documentary. What happened? How did he agree to do it?
Yeah, so once Kareem tracked down the nieces, then we set up this call, and this call was like, it was make or break. We had prepared for weeks about what we were going to say, who was going to say it, how it was going to go down. And we got on the phone, and it was Walter and his family and his nieces. And Walter said, I'm interested in this documentary, but I have one question, which is, what are your astrological signs? And we immediately were like, oh my goodness, I'm a Libra, Kareem's Libra, Alex is Sagittarius, but we just held our breath, and it was the strangest interview in the world. And he was like, that is the perfect answer, and I want to do this documentary. And so over the course of that phone call, we kind of worked through what it would look like, how documentaries work. And we thought, perfect, we're going to go there. They're into it. We're into it. They get it. And then we arrived, and we realized that Walter had no idea how a documentary worked. I remember he would ask Kareem, he would say, Kareem, when will I receive the scripts for the day? And then he would also start calling action. And we would have been filming for an hour beforehand. And we thought obviously filming, but he came from a different world. He was on television for decades, but it was a very different kind of television. So I think there was learning on both sides. But I think for all of us, it was a great privilege, and 2 years really well spent, and it was joyous to be with him.
So Kareem, tell us about
he loved the camera.
He loved it.
And he loved the camera, so we knew that there was a good chance he was going to say yes, the shot of being back on camera. But
so tell us about the first time you went and met him. Tell me about the entrance. Tell me about how it all happened.
Yeah, the funny thing about it is that Cristina and I had only met in person the night before we met Walter, which is kind of nuts, right? You're going to embark on a collaboration, and we just met the night before. So Walter lived in the suburbs of San Juan in what was probably like a Tony neighborhood in the 80s, but had seen better days. And as we were driving up, it was very clear which one was Walter Mercado's house. It was because it's all 70s tract homes, and then a yellow and blue Moroccan villa behind gates. And we looked at each other, and Alex, I remember, goes to Cristina recording. He's like, Cristina, where are we? And she's like, we're at Walter Mercado's house, in a whisper.
We were like kids. We were like children. Yeah,
totally. We were also giddy. We come inside, we meet Walter's nieces, and we meet his assistant Willie and his secretary Wilma, and we chat for a few minutes, and they take us upstairs, and Walter kind of has various sitting areas and living rooms, and one of them is sunken down. It's about 3 steps and 3 feet from the main area, and it is just chock full of books, religious iconography, pictures of James Dean and Rita Hayworth and Oscar Wilde next to La Virgen de la Caridad. And we're just taking it all in, and we're chatting pleasantly with the family. And we were probably waiting for 45 minutes. And all of a sudden, we just hear in this kind of husky yet feminine voice, Cristina, Kareem, Alex. And we look up, and there is Walter, head to toe in white linen, with his mane of hair, gold Yves Saint Laurent glasses. Like, he looked like a 70s movie star. And he was 3 feet above us because he hadn't come down yet. So it was like an apparition. It was like a religious moment. You're like, we were dumbstruck. We were completely dumbstruck. And there he was. And then he came up to each one of us and he grabbed us by the hand and looked into our eyes, and we were mesmerized. And he told us something about each one of us. Cristina had 2 weeks before just won top Best of the Fest award at Sundance. He told her about that and congratulated her for Science Fair, and talked to Alex about his work at HBO, and talked to me about The Last Resort. And we were just struck.
He said, Kareem, un monstruo de la cinematografía, which means a monster of the cinematography, which it still makes us all laugh.
I'm gonna choose it was a good monster, by the way. Like, and that was it. And then in true Walter fashion, we talked to him, and then he took us for like a hibachi lunch in a strip mall somewhere in San Juan afterwards.
So what was it like sitting down and starting the interviews with him right away? Did he trust you right away? Was he comfortable? Was the cameras go on and it was
no?
Was he nervous?
He didn't trust us at first. I think the first interviews, he wasn't nervous because he is a great performer, and he's done a million interviews in his life. But I think the first interviews were the kind of same performative Walter that you had seen on Latin television for 30 years. He had canned answers, and he wasn't going to go any farther than he had ever gone in interviews. And, it was the exact same thing we'd always seen, which was great because we needed a bit of that. But the longer we spent with him, the more we got a real Walter, or the closest you can get to a real Walter. And, as we built trust, as he began to like us and love us, he would let us in a little bit more. And Kareem had a number of very deep off-camera conversations with him. We spent a lot of time off camera with him, which I think helped with the on-camera stuff. But I think Kareem in particular had a lot of heart-to-hearts with him about how we would address kind of these issues that he had avoided all of his life, and that helped. But I think the truth is, Walter has this kind of very elaborate shell that he's created for himself, this very elaborate persona. But his true persona is quite similar to that in some way. It's a little less fabulous, but for example, when his 5-year-old niece, or 5-week-old niece, great grandniece, went to go meet him for the first time, he wouldn't let the baby in the room until he had a full face of makeup, his hair fully done, because he didn't want the baby to remember him any differently than he likes to think of himself. So he doesn't like letting people in, much less cameras, so it was a real process, and I think Kareem did a lot of the work to build that trust.
I want to say, for everyone who's watching this, make sure to send your questions in, because we are going to be taking questions towards the end of the panel. Alex, I want to ask you, what surprised you the most about Walter? What were you expecting? And what did you get that you were just not expecting?
I guess I was expecting someone a lot less self-aware. I think I was expecting someone who really bought into every aspect of his own persona. You know what I mean? In a way. And actually, I think my expectations were all reversed. I thought maybe this guy's actually kind of cynical about the astrology stuff, but really into his style, And in reality, his style was this thing that he just had fun with, that he was like, he'd call it his stupid things, boberías, tonterías. I love these, I use these stupid things to draw you in. What we didn't realize is that he is like a religious scholar. The guy has just read libraries worth of not just religious texts really, but like all great works of literature and philosophy. And he can really talk to you about any world religion in depth. And so, you know, we had a meeting, like a kind of like a pre-meeting with a cinematographer there on the island named Hochi Melero, who's very respected. And he was sort of like the dad that you meet before the date, you know, who vets you. And he was like, Walter no es un lightweight, Walter es un heavyweight, you know, and he meant like Walter is, people try to make jokes about this dude, but they don't know the real him. He's the real deal. And that's, I think, what we ultimately found.
One thing, obviously, everyone talks about is, was Walter gay? Was he queer? Was he bi? What was he? Kareem, can you answer it?
You know, I like to say, you've seen Walter. I don't know if he was a homosexual, but he was very clearly gay. But I jokingly say that but I think that the reality is that, you know, Walter grew up, context is key. Walter grew up in a time and in a place, in an era where coming out wasn't a discussion or an option. That wasn't something you did. And it was very, you know, machista, Latino culture, conservative and heteronormative and painfully Catholic. And he would hate for me to say that he was 88 when he died, but he was 88. So he really didn't like labels. He always said that. But he was still 100 years ahead of his time, as he said, you know. And I think he showed us that. Every time Walter came on television, he showed us who he was. You have to, you know, that first show was in August of '69, and Walter comes on screen in, you know, in sequence with lacquered on makeup and feathered hair and rings and jewelry. And that's from go. That was his look, and he did that every day in 70s Latin America. I mean, he told us who he was, and he showed us who he was. But he couldn't, you know, there just was a line, whether it was mental or whatnot, that he couldn't cross to maybe put it into words. But, you know, Carlos says in the film, I think, you know, it's beyond coming out. And I think it's true, because Walter, in representing the way he did, it was a subversive act. I'm going to come into your homes every Sunday night, and you were not going to realize that you were falling in love with a queer figure who is challenging the notions of masculinity, challenging the ideas of what a man should look and dress like, what gender is. I mean, 30 years ago, he was talking about, you know, the future not being binary and gender being a construct. And for queer people like myself, a little gay boy in the suburbs of Miami, it was immensely powerful to see that. And it was inspiring.
Why do you think the Latino community, the world, embraced him? If the world was so, you know, not pro-gay, that's for sure, why was Walter able to not only be accepted, but like you said, I mean, he broke through a wall where, you know, with sequins and the makeup and the hair, like he didn't just do it wink, wink. This was like double wink, like, you know.
Yeah.
Right. Why was he able to break through? Why was he able to make it?
I think, you know, it was very calculated, deliberate persona that he created. His mom told him at a young age, you know, being different is good. You should go on being different. And he said, okay, well, I'm going to construct in myself a famous person. And I think that was a very fabulous mechanism. The Walter Mercado persona was a fabulous coping mechanism so that he could be himself in a way that he could be accepted. And so everything, it was so carefully constructed, the things he would say and then the things he wouldn't say. You know, our abuelitas are all very religious. So they all love the Pope. They all love priests who are very fabulous in a certain way. And I think because he was religious, because he was mystical and magical, he got a pass of sorts. And because he could see the future, people would let everything else, you know, they wouldn't question it. They would say, well, it's Walter. And I think it was brilliant. it was genius how he handled this thing. And he used all of his learning and all of his studying and all of his knowledge about world religions and channeled them into his teachings. So we would sit down and he would give us a psychology. He would tell us that tomorrow was going to be a better day, and for an immigrant community we needed that. And then he would teach us about world religions, so it was a lesson. And then he would leave us with the most important message of all, which was that we needed to live our lives with love. And so he was doing 10 things at once, and he looked fabulous. So we all had to pay attention, kids, parents, abuelitas, every generation. So he was, I think the reason he succeeded was because he cracked some code through sheer will and fabulousness. And I don't know, I don't think you can overstate how brilliant it was that he did that when he did that.
So we have to talk about Bill McCullough. As what I love about your film is it's going along and you're like, oh, this guy's great. He brought Walter, to fame and fortune. And then it was just like a soap opera. Boom. To me, and you guys have heard me say that, he's sort of the villain of the story. For a man to sit there to see what happened with Walter, to say, I have no regrets. First of all, how did you get him to talk? Second of all, what did you think when he said, I have no regrets?
So first of all, I tracked Bill down. Took a while. He was living in Thailand at the time. He may still be living there. And didn't have much of a social media presence. And I finally got him on the phone. I was able to have a phone call with him. And we had done our research. The truth is, like, how you're describing it is accurate, and it's important to remember the first part of that, which is, here's this guy who built Walter Mercado from a kind of like late night oddity and a Puerto Rican icon, right, to like a multinational, legend, right? Like 120 million people. Like, that's Bill. Like, we saw Walter on Primer Impacto. That's Bill, right? So, credit has to be given where it's due in that sense. And so, Bill and I talked a lot about the old stories. They spent a lot of time together. They had a very father-son kind of relationship for a while, so they were very close. And we were transparent from the beginning that we were going to touch on the legal problems. It's part of the story. And Bill balked a little bit at that. But, we kind of explained, look, the story's going to get told one way or another. The family's giving us all their point of view. Wouldn't you rather have your voice included than not? And to Bill's credit, he showed up and answered all of our questions very frankly. I think that, Kareem and Cristina can chime in here, but I think that the no regrets line is it's one of those things where it's like, maybe he means it as you can't rewrite the past. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe Bill is comfortable where he is today, and maybe he did learn lessons and he just doesn't express that. It's hard to know, what I do know is that they had a very complicated history, and that ultimately some of the stuff that Bill told us was not corroborated by Walter's attorney and by the legal documents. Like, that's just a fact, and we had to display that. We attempted to reach out to Bill's attorney to have him give counter comment. He was unavailable to be reached after multiple attempts. So, it shook out, the facts shook out how they shook out, and that's where it all lands, So yeah, that's the whole kind of Bill saga in a nutshell.
And I would add, it's an interesting thing and an important thing to add, it's that neither Bill nor Walter had any ill words to say about one another. Walter loved Bill and would not, he recognized with some difficulty to get him to talk about the legal troubles in that era, but he would always say he loved Bill, and that he still loved Bill. And Bill, to his credit, the same thing, never said one negative word about Walter. Cristina really kind of brilliantly describes it. It's like a long marriage. Now you've divorced and you've kind of, you realize you can't be together, but you still love one another. And I do think that there's a great deal of affection and love for one another. But just like in marriages that don't work out, sometimes people do things that piss the other one off, or that you couldn't imagine that they were done. But I think it says a lot about both of them, actually. The fact that they still have so much admiration and affection for one another.
Well, was Walter, lack of a better term, bitter about how things turned out? I mean, like you said, this was a guy who, 120 million people at one time were watching him. He, as you guys shown, every talk show, everywhere. Was there a sadness there at all?
I think I would say there's a sadness, but not a bitterness. He never harbored resentment. He never harbored anger. That was not a feeling I think anyone had ever seen him feel. But I think he did feel sad that this had ended. That it was something he loved so much. He loved Bill so much, and being, getting into that situation with someone who you love, I think is even more complicated. I think it would have been easy if he didn't care about him. I think it would have been much easier. But he did care so much about Bill. And as journalists, I think we felt as though we have to present both sides. I mean, I'm a recovering investigative journalist, and we felt as though we had to present both sides and let the audience decide how they feel. And I think, a lot of people think what Bill did was take advantage of Walter. And that's fine. But I think our job was just to give people both sides of the story, the family side and Bill's side, and let the audience decide how they feel about it.
Some questions are starting to come in, so I think I'll pepper it through because it's actually really great questions. Rochelle Sal, if I'm saying your name incorrectly, please forgive me. Rochelle Salnave, did Walter get to see a cut of the film before he passed?
He saw about 20 minutes of the film. Kareem and I were with him about 5 weeks before he passed away. And although he was not physically well, he was mentally there 100%. And he saw the first 20 minutes, I would say, from his youth until his rise as a superstar, which I think honestly would be his favorite part of the film. And so he was very happy with that. He loved it. He said he was overcome with emotions. And then Walter, we submitted the cup to Sundance on November 1st, and Walter passed away on November 2nd. So the timing of everything over the last 6 months has been really insane. It's been a roller coaster of, submitting the film, him being happy, him passing away, being accepted, being at Sundance, but without Walter, I think everything has been very bittersweet for us, because it's great that we've made kind of a piece to memorialize the man, but we really wanted to be at Sundance with him. We really wanted him to be here to see kind of what it is that he means to all of us. So
we at least thought, he'll be able to go to the Miami Film Festival, right? Like if he can't make it to Park City, I mean, he'll go to Miami for, and it's just those kind of little things. I mean, Miami didn't end up happening at all, but those kind of little things, it's just this constant reminder of gain and loss, gain and loss.
Maybe this was Walter saying, if I can't be there, it ain't happening.
The world is shutting down. If I can't be there.
Shut it down. Yeah.
Because literally everything now I think about it's a sign from Walter. Let's talk about a feature film. We have this wonderful documentary. Tell me the wonderful story about who Walter wanted to play him in the scripted feature film of Walter Mercado.
Sure. So when Kareem and I were with him that last 5 weeks before he passed away, we said, Walter, how would you feel about a feature film, about a narrative film about your life? And he was like, I would like that. And I said, who would you want to play you? What about Gael Garcia Bernal, who's an actor I love and thought would be great? And he said, oh, no, he's too old. And then we said, well, who would you want to play you? And he said, who is that boy in the film call me by your name. And we were like, Timothy Chalamet? And he's like, yes, this would be a good opportunity for him. Just a child, a young man, not Latino. But like Alex says, all he cares about is youth and beauty. And in his mind, that's who he is. He's a 19-year-old child.
The twinkiest twink he could find.
Yeah. Those are his primary identifiers. You know, it's like some of us are like, oh, I'm a Latino. No, Walter's like, I'm beautiful. I'm eternally young. You know what I mean?
Let's have another question here. I saw it. It was a really good one. What was your favorite item in Walter's house that you saw?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Good question.
I mean, Walter's favorite item for a long time ended up getting destroyed during production.
His favorite item. Oh my God, I get bullied every day. Do you see what I go through? I broke a Grecian vase that was in
beautiful Grecian vase,
one of a kind Grecian vase,
amphora, and he would never let me forget it. And every day, and I think we've mentioned this. He had an incredible sense of humor, and he loved like teasing people and joking. And you see it in the film, you know, especially like The Only One in Town. He was making us laugh nonstop, but he also would love giving us shit. So, and also I did something very bad, which is I broke a vase.
How did you break it? What happened?
I mean, if you've ever been on a set, we have a lot of gear. We're like always moving around. We have a lot of things. And I think I was moving a tripod somewhere, and his house is chock full of precious items. And it's a miracle that we didn't break more.
True.
And to Joey Dowd and Peter Alton, our first and second or DP and second camera, they are brilliant geniuses for not having broken anything. But I knocked something over, and he would never let me forget it. He brought it up every shoot. He would be like, "Oh," we would ask him a hard question, and he'd say, "Oh, you know, I'm just thinking about this thing I love so much, this vase that was broken by some woman." He would never stop talking about the vase.
And Cristina would feel bad about it every time he brought it up for a little bit.
I replaced it. I got a Grecian vase to replace it.
How many hours of footage did you have in the end?
100, I think. Yeah.
We shot 30 days with him.
30 days.
We shot 30 days with him. We were running 2 cameras most of the time. And, you know, we shot a bunch of interviews, many of which didn't end up in the movie. And then if you add like our archival library to that, it's just like, I think it's like, I don't know, maybe 1,000 hours is an exaggeration, but hundreds of hours.
So is there something, obviously, you know, you do have to cut things out of a movie. What's one of the things that you really just didn't want to cut, but you got to make it work? What's that interview? What's that soundbite? What's on the cutting room floor that you really wanted in the movie?
For me, it's Wild Wild Country. A lot of people don't know this, but there is actually a crazy crossover episode of Mucho Mucho Amor and Wild Wild Country, which is that when Walter actually suffered a tragedy in his life, of one of his good friends passed away, and he went on a kind of eat, pray, love trip to India, where he takes up with a guru who calls himself Osho, or the Bhagwan.
Wow.
And he becomes a disciple of the Bhagwan in India in the 70s, and then comes back to Puerto Rico. And in the early 80s, that same Bhagwan moves to Oregon, and then we see Wild Wild Country. So there's pictures of Osho in Walter's house. And Walter used the pseudonym for a little while when he was trying to skirt around the name, and that was Shanti Ananda, and Osho gave him that name. So yeah, so there's this wild kind of like, there's a mucho wild crossover thing going on.
Mucho wild.
Yeah.
Before you shot it, I mean, we knew he went, you know, to India, and he did these different trips. Did you know that connection?
No.
No, we didn't know until we showed up in his house and we saw.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We
Well,
saw
why
the picture on the wall.
It wasn't
We were
out. It wasn't out yet. One of you guys recognized it as like one of the promos of Netflix coming out.
Yeah.
And we texted it about it after the trip, and you were like, I think it's the same guy as this Wild Wild Country series that's coming out this week. And I was like, that doesn't sound right. And then it was the exact same guy.
That is, okay, that's the scripted feature I want to see. That is, no pun intended, wild.
That's right.
It is.
But that was kind of like Walter had a million stories, like a million coincidences, life experience that would just come up, and you're like, wait, what? You know, it was like he had a fan and on a chair, like a hand fan, and I went to move it, and he's like, oh, please be very careful for that. Gypsy Rose Lee gave that to me. I'm like, what? It was just like random stuff in passing, and you were like, wait, how did that? Oh, she came to Puerto Rico, and I went to a show, and there's like tons of things like that he would just kind of, you know, like pearls that he would drop while telling us a story, and you were like, huh? Now is when you mentioned this, like, you know.
Gloria Vanderbilt, remember he's good friends with Gloria Vanderbilt, and he was like, how old is Anderson now? 17, 18? And we were like, Anderson Cooper? He thought Anderson Cooper was 17 or 18 years old. We were like, he is a national icon. He is beloved. And he was like, I met him when he was very little. But for him, time was just an idea. It was more of a suggestion.
Well, that makes me very happy because on Facebook, someone just asked, who's the Anderson Cooper clown interviewing them? So anyway.
Someone said that?
I just...
Oh boy.
It's kind of genius. It's kind of genius.
The answer to that is thank you, because Anderson Cooper is Silver Fox, right?
Another question here from Fernando Rodriguez. While filming with Walter, were your views on religion or spirituality affected? Did they change at all?
Fernando Rodriguez, I think, is that Nando Villa, maybe a friend of ours. Nando is the person who told me to call Alex because Alex was obsessed with Walter. So Nando is in large part to thank for all of this. But did our views on religion change?
Yes.
We went in skeptics.
I don't think so.
And we're all kind of agnostic atheists. So, you know, we don't believe in anything pretty much. But we believe in Walter.
Mm-hmm.
We do talk a lot about the fact that I don't think that, you know, none of us, you know, we weren't saved or found or anything like that. There's no shrines, I think, in any of our homes unless they look pretty. But I think that we all do kind of talk about like the weird coincidences that happened in the whole filmmaking process. Oh wait, they're showing shrines.
Oh, I didn't know where mine is. Oh, I have mine.
I haven't gotten mine yet, but
There it is.
Our Walter Mercado patron saint candles. Cristina has two. But we do talk about the weird coincidence. So like I think we're firm non-believers still, but like the fact that we finished the film on November 1st and Walter died on November 2nd, or the fact that the three of us were looking to do this project and came together
On the same day. That's
on
great.
the same day. I mean, there is just a lot of weird moments. And folks have told us about experiences with Walter that they had, which were pretty wild. So,
And then, of course, there is that coincidence. Walter Mercado shows up on RuPaul's Drag Race a week ago tonight.
that's right.
No one has ever done Walter Mercado on RuPaul's Drag Race. And this is obviously filmed months ago, but it shows up. As Alex told me, he goes, people think that was the most brilliant marketing stunt we've ever done.
Yeah.
But
I wish we were that smart that we were going like, let's do Drag Race, let's do Snatch Game, which is like apparently the biggest night for Drag Race. let's just have someone dressed like Walter. Like, that's obvious. We can pull that off, you know?
If we were better at this, we would be taking credit. We would be like, oh yeah, yes.
Lisa Purdue wants to know, how is Walter's assistant doing? How is Willie doing?
Willie's okay.
Yeah, Willie's doing well. I think, you know, Willie's retired now. His life was Walter. I think we can't say enough about how much he did to make Walter the icon that he was. Just as Bill was important in making Walter what he was, Willie was behind the scenes in almost every single shoot in Walter's entire life. And he, you know, I think these are very difficult times. We saw him at Sundance, and, you know, obviously it was just a few months after Walter passed away. He was in mourning. We were all in mourning. But I think he's certainly devoted himself to preserving the legacy that is Walter and Walter's message. But yeah, I think, you know, they were, if not lovers, they were life partners. They were, you know, attached at the hip. They didn't live together, but he was, you know, Willie was with him every single hour of the day. When we would arrive to shoot, Willie was there. When we would leave, Willie was there. And so it can't be easy, but, you know, I think preserving the legacy is definitely a new life goal for Willie.
What do Walter's nieces think of the film? What have they told you?
They're very happy with it. Yeah, they're very happy with it. I think, you know, we had them at Sundance, and I think it's strange because on the one hand, I think they're very happy with the final product. On the other hand, they're still mourning their uncle, who really was like a father. I mean, let's be honest, like, they spent more time with him than they did, I think, with their own father, or, you know, he was like the primary kind of like adult in their life. So it's tough, I think.
He was like a father and a mother. He like taught them all how to put on makeup. He like taught them, he gave them outfits, and he occupied like the most amazing role in all of their lives. I mean, can you imagine having Walter as an uncle? I think that's a blessing. I think the most amazing blessing. But yeah, he was a father and a mother.
And their father, their actual father, had passed away just a few months before Walter did. So they had a real, I mean, I think like 4 or 5 months. They had a real kind of 1-2 punch hit them in 2019. So it's been a lot. But they've texted us reviews and stuff that they've seen, and I think hopefully that this is a little cathartic for them.
Now let's talk about a bunch of people are asking about the perfume maker.
I love it.
Did you find this person? Who is this person?
No, today I got an email from someone and it said La Bestia, and I opened it and it was like, oh my God, I love the movie and what a coincidence. And then he signed it La Bestia. And then I realized it was a different La Bestia. It was like, it's a reporter who calls himself La Bestia, and my heart completely sank. To this day, I don't know if do you guys know who La Bestia is?
I think he's in Miami, right? La Bestia?
Allegedly.
That's what he said.
The truth is, we're taking it to our grave with us. We're not telling a soul. It's highly classified who La Bestia is.
He's a beast in perfume.
He's a beast in perfume.
What is Walter's legacy?
Kareem?
You know, I think it in one way it's a hard question because there's so much that's connected to it. But you know, I truly believe is that, you know, every day Walter came into our homes and he shut us all up for 4 or 5 minutes, and he made us all pay attention, and he made us all kind of forget what was going on with his fabulousness, with his, you know, over the topness, with his predictions, but more importantly with his message of love and hope. And you know, the 3 of us are the children and grandchildren of immigrants who came to this country, left everything behind to start anew. It wasn't easy. It was difficult. Our parents worked and many times well into the nights, and our grandparents took care of us. And we are just one sample of those immigrants or immigrant children's. To have somebody come in and tell you, don't worry, I know today was hard, tomorrow's going to be better. Be yourself, and love everyone else. I mean, I can't think of a better message. I can't think of a better way to lead a life. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Libra or a Catholic or none of those things. That message that the most important thing is love, I think, will be his legacy.
Was there anything that he just would not, a topic where he was just like, don't even try going there?
He didn't like talking about his age. He didn't like talking about his plastic surgeries or the lack thereof. And he didn't like talking about his sexuality. And I think, you know, we obviously tried to get him to talk about all three of them. And you know what? He didn't like talking about bad times. More than anything, he didn't want to talk about bad times. And death, which is, of course, part of bad times. And we tried to get him to talk about all of it. And he would try to steer away from them nonstop. And he would often, you know, we've heard the same stories, maybe, well, dozens of times, certainly. He would go, oh, I'm not going to tell you about this, but I'm going to tell you about one time in Greece. And so we have hours of tape of him telling
us. When I was in Look Back in Anger,
Look Back in
Anger, we did like 70 years ago, that he would bring up pretty much every time we interviewed him.
Right. If he didn't want to answer something, I mean, he's like we said, he has 50 years of rehearsed answers. He would just start telling us a different story and not address it, or he would make us laugh, and that was the more effective one for the three of us. He would say, you know, we would say, Kareem says brilliantly, well, you're not telling me you're a virgin, and he like squares up and he says, the only one in town, and you can hear all of us off camera just dying, cracking up, and totally forgetting the line of questioning. You know, I read that. Sorry, go ahead.
No.
I was gonna say, reading that transcript, we get all of our interviews transcribed, and reading all that transcript, when I get to the part where he just says the only one in town and we die and totally change subjects, I'm like, he got us. He got us. He got us to totally forget about what he didn't want us to talk about.
But he was also a veteran of TV, right? So I was thinking about this today, that like part of the reason we would give up is because he gave us great sound bites. So like instinctively as like a filmmaker, you're like, oh, I think we got it, but you didn't get it. You didn't get it. He just bested you by giving you like a different kind of gold. You know what I mean? And you're like, and so you forgot. But you know, Chris and Kareem, I don't remember him ever saying, don't ask me about that.
He absolutely did not.
Never.
There was never a subject that him or his family said that. In fact, when I told the family, I said, I'm going to talk to him about sexuality and this, and they said, he's never talked about it in a clear way before, but you should absolutely talk to him about it. So it's actually kind of the opposite. They all, and him, there's no rules of nothing that we could not bring up. The thing that probably would have bothered him the most was the age, in the weirdest ways. He used to, one of the stories that we loved hearing is Walter used to lie about his age all the time, and including like when he would get credit cards or open new accounts someplace, he would give like the wrong or different years. And his secretary and Willie would always say, it's the biggest problem, because when we call to verify a charge or something, they say, what's the birth date? And they say, it's March 9th, this. They're like, no, that's not what it was. So they'd have to fight with Walter and be like, Walter, you have to tell them your age. You have to tell them the real numbers. It's creating problems for us.
At hospitals, he would be in the hospital, getting a surgery, and they'd ask him for his age, and he'd give them the wrong number or the wrong day. And I remember Wilma, his secretary, knew the various ages that he might give. So she would try different ages that she had heard him give before.
But also, like the last trick that Walter ever pulled, like the same as the only one in town, is that I think 70% of news outlets have reported that Walter died at the age of 87. And Walter died.
I've been reporting that.
He
Mark,
died at 88.
He was 88 years old. He's just he spun this 1 year lie for so long that when you Google search it and go back, it tracks for decades. But he was 88.
His birth certificate, his family tells us he's 88. But he, like the New York Times, like the Washington Post, the LA Times, like every reputable news source, he won by 1 year.
Oh, it's the best. The best.
Tell us about Lin-Manuel Miranda. I mean, did you know that meeting was going to be happening while you were filming? Like, how did you find out? And then, you know, you filmed this it was a very intimate moment between the two of them. Lin got very, very emotional, obviously. And it was really, you know, it's interesting when you see someone like a Lin, who's, you know, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood now, for sure, probably one of maybe 3 of the biggest Puerto Rican stars in Hollywood, to be so deferential and so like, oh my God, this is you. That must have been quite an experience filming that.
Yeah. Well, we actually planned our trip to Puerto Rico, the timing of it, based on when Lin was in Puerto Rico. Because we knew that Lin was a huge fan. He tweets about it all the time. But Alex is the person who kind of put all of the things together.
Well, so, yeah, I mean, initially we thought that Walter might go to the Hamilton show. So we thought that was just what was going to happen. But Walter had been having already these physical problems. And I had mentioned to a friend of mine who's a mutual friend of Lin-Manuel's that Walter Mercado had wanted to meet him. And as a result of that, Lin reached out and coordinated this, like, you know, meeting at Walter's aunt's house. I was still in it. You guys went. I was in LA, but I think at Walter's Walter's niece's apartment. Yeah. But we knew from when we started the documentary, we were like we needed an avatar. We needed someone who could talk about Walter the way we talk about Walter, but that people would actually care about. And so Lin was perfect for that because he had the exact same childhood experience that we had. So it was the same meeting Santa Claus moment that we had when we walked into Walter's house.
And what you said that Walter was a fan of Lin's. How does Walter talk about being a fan of someone? Because I feel like he just likes people to be fans of him.
No, he was so obsessed with Lin. He was so excited when Lin agreed to the meeting, and he described it as 2 titans meeting, 2 titans of industry, no, 2 titans of artistry of Puerto Rico meeting, admiring each other, 2 titans admiring each other. But he loved it, and everybody who was there that day loved it. Lin's whole team was crying. Walter's whole team was crying. It was just like everybody was in tears. It was a very special moment, I think, for the 2 of them, but also for the island, you know, to have kind of, I think they represented generationally kind of the talent of today and the talent of an era before. And it was a really important, special moment for all of us.
And I always forget to mention this, but Lin's father, Luis Miranda, is like a very important person to the island of Puerto Rico and Puerto Rican politics. And he and Walter actually had met before. So I think that sort of added to it. There was like a generational bridge there, you know, which is why Luis is very like quiet and just smiling the entire time. If you see in the interview, he's just like so happy his son is meeting Walter and vice versa, you know.
Was Walter political at all?
Yeah. A little bit.
Walter, you know, was an advocate for inclusion and for the immigrant community and for love, which is basically the antithesis of Donald Trump. And so he was very, very vocal about the dangers of Donald Trump. And I actually yesterday was looking back at some of his forecasts, and he said if Donald Trump is elected, the world will go through a very difficult time. And wow. This was in 2016. Yeah, it was.
Did Walter have a prediction about 2020?
No, he didn't.
No, right?
He also thought Hillary would win, and then when we asked him about it, he was like, "Well, she won the popular vote. I mean, I was right. More people. What I said was more people would vote for her." He always he would hedge. Do you remember?
Yeah.
I said more people would vote for her. I didn't say she was going to win. Really? Okay.
Well, this was wonderful. This was so much fun. I could keep going. I know it's getting late on the East Coast, but thank you. Congratulations on the movie. I mean,
Mark.
you know, I've told you this already. I've done 2 stories with you guys, and they blew up. I mean, the Timothy Chalamet story has turned into this whole little phenomenon, which has been amazing. And just, you know, you see it on social media. Everyone is obsessed with Walter, and everyone wants to see this doc because, as much as Walter is out there, a lot of people didn't know his story, and like you said, it's a generational thing. So I think you've done a great service to Walter. I think he's looking down maybe somewhere. I don't know if I believe that, but congratulations again, and I can't wait to see what you guys are up to next.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for bringing extra fabulousness too
I
with the outfit
know.
today.
We barely
Now
talked
what
about
do I
this.
do with it? What do I
Save
do?
it. In a few months, you can go to Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
You know what? You're right. Yeah, West Hollywood, it'll work. Thank you again. Take care, everybody.
Mucho, mucho.
Mucho, mucho amor.
Bye.